Now in this video, we are going to build analytics on top of this Firebase. Popular questions for your system design round that in the interview can ask you something like, if you have to integrate analytics in your app, then what should be your approach? What classes are you going to create and how you're going to use any third-party libraries? Now, as we have Firebase, now if I talk about the simplest thing that how we can use it, that you can go to any of the classes. Let's say that if I go here in my view model, and if I import Firebase, then here let me delete all these things. I think we don't need it now. So in the on up here, I can just write one method here, like dot log event, and then you can give any log event name. Let's say for example, I'm going to build in my later video onboarding screen, so let me give this onboarding test for example, pass as simple empty. Okay, now what it will do once I run this, right now I'm running QA, let me run it the dev one. But the problem in this approach is that you have to import Firebase in all your views. Now if you have to switch from Firebase to some other SDK, in that case what you need to do, as this analytics belong to this Firebase, you need to do and you need to go to each of the place where you're using this analytics.log event and change with the new framework method that you're going to use it, right? And let's say that if you're using at 200, 300, or 400 places, then you have to go and manually change add all those places, and it will become a tedious task. And if you follow this kind of approach in your design round, definitely nobody is going to accept this, right? So my app is now running, and let's see that if in the real time we are getting any event here. So let me go here, click on real time. Okay, so it's showing one user, and you can see that onboarding test is coming. So that means this event what we are logging, this is working fine. Okay, nevertheless, I'm not going to import Firebase in all the places. Let me create a new class. So in the most common fashion, we call it as Firebase Analytics Manager. We'll create this class here, and this class will import basically your Firebase. Let me import it, and then this class we can make it singleton. That's the most common approach we take in general scenario. So let me make this class as singleton so that it can be used throughout the app. And then we can write a function here, let's say log event, and this can take two parameter. Let's say the first one is event name, which is string, and the second one is param, is going to be of type dictionary. Okay, and then this method will call your analytics. So analytics dot log event name is name and param what we are passing here. Okay, and then instead of importing it here, let me just discard this change, and I'll call this manager dot shared dot log event, and then let me just call it as test 1, and param I'm still passing as empty. Okay, now let me delete it. So now what we did basically that we removed the dependency of Firebase from this view model. That means that in all the 250 or 300 or 400, whatever the places you are going to use, you are not going to use, you are not going to import Firebase. You are just going to use this manager class to log your event. Okay, and let me run it one more time and see whether this new event gets triggered. Now does this solve our problem? Now if you see the first problem, it actually solves, but one thing is that if you have to change from this Firebase to some other SDK, now this concrete class has to be changed. That is the first class, because we have not used any protocol, so directly the concrete class implementation will change. And the second thing is that as we are using a concrete class with singleton here, it if you want to write a test cases for it, then it actually going to call your main Firebase method, and this makes this function actually non-testable. So this approach is like for simple project. If I say that for your own project, if I making YouTube videos on creating a notes app or creating a video on core data, that is fine, but I will not suggest you to go with this approach for any large based application. Okay, then what should be the actual approach, right? Now first thing is that uh, as we are creating this Firebase Analytics Manager class here, and then using it directly here. So first thing is that let's try to remove this from the singleton form. Okay, and let's try to use with more protocol oriented concept, that what Swift basically we use. Like if you see in this thing, first thing is that we are taking two parameters, right? Name and the param. So instead of having this as argument, it doesn't look that much great. So what I will do, I'll define basically a protocol and call it as event protocol, for example. Okay, and this will have two thing basically. One will be name, the same thing what I'm using in the down, same thing I'm writing on the top, and the second thing will be this param, which will be of type string and any. Okay, so this event protocol basically will be containing your name and params, and param will contain a dictionary that all the parameter that you want to log in that particular case. Okay, now if you talk in general, you have two things. Like the first thing is that you need some sort of manager which will talk to your view, and then you need the your actual SDK manager, like your Firebase or any other SDKs that you are using. Okay, in general I can like narrow it to down to two matter. Like one you will use to initialize that SDK. Now in the case of Firebase, like once you call the firebase.configure, it automatically read from this Google service info playlist. But let's say that in some other case, if you have to pass some specific IDs and keys, that you think you can do in the case of initialize method. So let me define one more protocol here and call it as analytics event logger protocol. Okay, and this will contain two methods. One is initialize, and then one will be track event. Okay, or we can call it as log event. And what this log event will contain, this will contain basically this event protocol object. Okay, right? This Firebase Analytics Manager that what we have created will actually conform to this protocol. Okay, so now I'm going to remove this shared, and instead of this, let me conform to this protocol. Okay, now this I can actually move this all things. I can move to separate method. Basically this then requires uh, a definition of your Firebase. So let me create a new file here, and I'll call this as analytics manager. Okay, and this definition I'll move to here. So now in this is actually my Firebase Analytics Manager, which is conforming to this protocol. Now it is giving some error. What's the error? I just moved it here, so it will take some time to refresh. Let me write it again. Analytics event logger protocol, and now we can import the, or we can define the method. Okay, now see this will actually move here. Now we don't have directly name, so it will come from event.name, and again the same thing for event.param. So see, roughly I'm doing the same thing, just the code is looking more structured now. Right, now if you have to write the mock for this class, you can always make this Firebase Analytics Manager. You can create a mock Firebase Analytics Manager which conform to the same protocol, and then you can check that once you call this log event whether this method is getting called or not, and according to that you can define your test cases. Okay, and for the base practice, when you define a class, always make it final. Okay, until unless you require some sort of inheritance. Now my Firebase Analytics Manager is ready. I don't have any use case of initialize here, so I'll just leave this method as empty for a time being. Maybe for some other SDKs, I may require this. Okay. Now the next thing is that we have this Analytics Manager. Now see, your view should not know that whether it's using Firebase or it's using some other SDK. Your view should just know that it has to log the or it has to track the event. That's what view and view model any classes should be. Now inside that analytics, what is happening, that is not view responsibility. Okay, so this view is not going to use this Firebase Analytics Manager directly. So we'll provide further a new interface actually, and let's call this interface as Analytics Manager. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to define one more protocol here, call it as Analytics Manager protocol. Okay, and this will just contain one method, that is this log event. Okay, now I will have a now concrete class. Again, good practice, make a class as funnel, as you're giving system design interview, so everything will be noticed at that point of time, right? And let's call this class as Analytics Manager, and this class will conform to this protocol, right? Now your view or your view model or anywhere wherever we want to use this logger, we will always talk through this Analytics Manager, right? Now see, when we say Analytics Manager, I don't specify that it's a Firebase or it's any other third-party SDK. It's just Analytics Manager. Internally, what we are using, the view is not responsible for that, or the view should not worry about that, right? Now once we confirm to this method, then we have to, or once we confirm to this protocol, we have to implement this method. Now to log this event, we need the instance of this Firebase, right? Now again, we are not going to create this Firebase instance directly inside this Analytics Manager, because if in the future, if I need to move away from Firebase, this class should not be changed, like, and that's why I'm telling that when you write the code, you should always focus about designs principle. You should always focus about solid principles. It doesn't depend at what architecture you use. Like for example, you see a lot of videos these days on MV design pattern. In the next video or in the coming video, I'll talk about that, why you should think not twice, thrice before even thinking to use MV design pattern in your real-time project or in any complex applications, and how badly it violates the solid principles or clean architectures principle and lot of other software principles, right? Okay, we'll talk to that later, but let's say first here that how we can use this log event. So first thing is that this class should have an instance of your this Analytics Manager. Okay, and as I told, I'm not going to create this concrete object directly, so I'll use this protocol actually to create this object, and this should be private because I don't want to initialize it from outside. And then here I'm going to have an init method. Okay, and what this init method will contain, it will contain the same definition, and then this logger will come to this class when we initialize this Analytics Manager, right? So now we have this sorry, I forgot the var keyword or let keyword actually. So I have this logger, and then as this is a part of this protocol and it have this log event, so I can call this log event, right? So let me call this, so logger dot log event, and then you can directly pass this event, right? No need of doing anything here. Now I have this Analytics Manager, so see how the flow will actually happen. So your view will talk, or your view model will talk through always this interface, Analytics Manager protocol, and this interface when we initialize in the project will initialize for an Analytics Manager. Now when we want to write the test cases, we can create a mock Analytics Manager and write the test cases for that. Okay, now how can we use this Analytics Manager? So one way that you can create again singleton object of that, I'm not going to go in that approach. So in my second or third video, like I've already discussed that how I'm using this dependency container, like the concept of this swinjet library to inject different dependencies that has to be used at the project level. Okay, so if you have not watched this video, I'll suggest you to have a look at that video and then come back here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to register here the dependency of my um, here this will be basically your analytics manager protocol. Okay, and here we are going to create the instance of analytics manager, and we are going to pass the logger as firebase analytics manager. That's it. Okay, so let's say that in the future, if you want to change this firebase to some other SDK, you don't need to change at multiple places. So you will come, you will just create a new class for whatever the SDK that you're using for that particular case, and that SDK will again have different method like this, but it will take the same name and parameter, right? So this method will again not going to change. Only this method will change for that new class, not here also. And then that new class object you can pass it here. Okay, so let me build it and see if it's giving any error. Okay, no, we don't have this shared class, so I'm just going to comment this line, and then we already have this property wrapper, so I can use it directly, and I have already registered, so it will not even crash for me. And this is what, if you see here, we are registering this as an analytics manager protocol. So this is analytics manager protocol, and let's call it as analytics manager, right? Now here let's use this to call event. Okay, and now we have to create the event, right? Now let me create this event. If I see here, I don't have any concrete implementation of event, right? We created the event protocol. Where is that? Here, but till now we have not created any concrete class. So one way is that you can create a struct here. Let's say, for example, a struct event which conforms to event protocol, and then this can have these two fields. Okay, that is one of the approach. So let me just remove this. You can make this as optional, so or not optional, have default value, so that you don't need to pass param every time. And then here we can create the object of event, and you can pass name. Let's say that we already have test1, so we'll pass as test2. Okay, now let me build it again. It got failed for some reason. Let me see why. Okay, this is not a string, this is a dictionary, right? Let me run it again. So okay, so this thing is working fine, like till now there is no error, and then we are able to call all the method. Now the one thing here, the interviewer can ask you that we are going to create this event everywhere, and this string is, or anything is, this name is going to be hard coded, okay, in all the places. Now one way to avoid is that we can create an enum. So how to do that, let me show you that as well, that instead of going with this struct approach, so we can create an enum here, and let's call this enum as analytics event. Sorry for this spelling mistake. And this we can have multiple cases. Let's say, for example, case click button event, for example, right? And then finally we have to actually confirm to this event protocol, because this is going to have what you see, multiple name based on what case you are passing. It will have either name or it can have parameter also. So let me take one more thing like case, let's say that chapter tabbed for example, and this will have the name of the chapter for example. Okay, now we have to use this enum to actually trigger our analytics, right? So for that, what we have to do basically that this enum has to conform to this protocol, right? So what we can do, we can write extension of this analytics event, and this will conform to this event protocol. Okay, now once you confirm, then you have to implement this name and string, right? So for example, you need to this and this param as well. So here what we can do, we can write a switch statement, and this we can do on self. Okay, and if it is your click button event, you can pass whatever the string that you want to pass. Let's say for example click button and then event. Similarly here you can pass return and then chapter tapped. Okay, we are not using this name, so you can just avoid this. Now we are done with this name, so we have to do the same thing with the this param as well. Okay, so for param we need this basically name, so we can have a dictionary. Let's say that in this case I want to return name colon name, right? And for the first case we don't want any body, let's say, or we don't want any param, we can just have an empty param. Okay, so now my analytics event enum is ready. So what I'm going to do, instead of creating this here directly, so let's say that I can remove this part, sorry, I can delete this part from here. I can directly write analytics event dot, let's say click button tab. Okay, so this way it looks more good, more structured. Let's say that even if I want to pass some param, we can pass this here, let's say that chapter first or chapter 1. Okay, again this spelling is little wrong, so let me just make it correct. Okay, so this is one of the approach, but the problem in this approach is, again the question can come here that what if you have 200 events or 300 event or 400 events, right? In this case what will happen, this enum will become too big, right? And that will again, like whenever you have to change, you have to change at just one enum having the whole project list. So instead of having this as one enum, what I suggest here as a good practice, that you can have multiple enum, because finally if you see what is this enum, that confirms to this protocol, right? So for example, you can have it as a class basis, or you can have at a module basis. Let's say that I'm going to build a onboarding module in my further classes, so I can have enum onboarding events, and this can contain, let's say, click button and let's say for example next button tab. Okay, I'll just call this as this and this as here, and instead of this name I can take here as index for example, and here again this is index, and I can pass the same index here. Okay, so this is one I can say one enum. Similarly you can have a enum based for your dashboard, right? Let's say that I can have a dashboard event here, and then dashboard button can have, let's say, a click button, or it can have next chapter tab for example, and this will have a name and this will have a string. Okay, and we can just copy and paste this part, and we can write the extension of dashboard event. Okay, and click button is same, we have to just change this next button tab, and this is again your chapter, and this you can pass it here, right? So by this way, what basically you are doing, you are trying to break down your enums into much simpler level, like module level or classes level. It's not necessary that you write everything in the same class. You can have, like, let's say for example, a different file. Let's say that I can create a file onboarding plus events, and I can move this enum and this extension there. Okay, and again, there's no problem in creating how many enums you are creating, because finally every enums will conform to the same protocol, and then you can use it without any like no restrictions. So for example, I can write here uh, onboarding event dot click button next, and if I run it, it will not have any problem, because this enum conforms to this protocol which have this name and parameter implemented. Like, so this way how you can actually implement this what do you call analytics in much scalable way, much reusable way. And let's hope best for your system design interview if this question is asked, or any similar question is asked. Our take from any system design interview is that your system should be scalable, your system should be reusable. Don't build a system that is just solving at that point of time. If you're going for any system design interviews, it should be always a plug and play kind of thing, that if you need some functionality, it should be easily pluggable. Like, and the same thing should happen with your code also, that when you're writing something, it should always be reusable, scalable, testable. That's what you have to show to your interviewer in any system design interview. Hope this video helps you, and if you really like this video, then please do comment, share and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and all the best for your system design interview. Thank you.